Madam Chair, it appears we have quorum, so whenever you'd like to get started, I'm happy to read through the preamble.
Sounds good. Do you need me to call it to order first?
You can wait until after I'm done with it. Like when we do roll call, I just want to make sure you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. Well, this is the September 5th, 2024 meeting of the Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee. Just to go over the virtual meeting regulations and procedures, the meeting shall be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the start of any presentation. The recused committee member will then leave the meeting for the duration of the case discussion. The chair will call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call of the committee. The administrator will then introduce the first project. The meeting will then be turned over to the applicant to proceed through the presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the committee. Once the presentation is concluded, the administrator will provide background information when applicable and read any received public comments. The committee will then begin deliberations and project review. Please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to speak. After deliberations and review concludes, the committee will render its recommendation and/or motion. The applicant may leave the meeting after their project review is complete. All projects will follow the same format until all projects have been heard by the committee. Once all projects are heard, the chair will call for any committee/administrative reports. And after all reports have been heard, the chair will adjourn the meeting. Regarding community comments, any and all community members may provide their written comments, thoughts, or questions regarding projects presented to the committee. Community members may also telephone their comments or questions to the committee administrator. All comments, thoughts, or questions must be submitted to the committee administrator no later than 48 hours prior to the start of the meeting. Public comment received after the deadline will not be heard by the committee. Public comment will be collected by Landmark staff and sent to the committee members for review prior to the scheduled meeting. Landmark staff will also summarize any of the received comments during the meeting. Applicants of the project are under no obligation to answer any community questions. Community members are invited to attend the Design Review Advisory Committee meetings, but there will be no open public comment period. As a reminder, all projects are being reviewed using the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and are considered for the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. All projects are considered on a case-by-case basis. The Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee makes recommendations to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. Recommendations are not final actions. Depending on the scope of the project, submissions may be approved administratively or will need to be reviewed by the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. Projects will be scheduled at the next available commission meeting after an action is taken. So with that out of the way, yeah, Nia, whenever you're ready to call the meeting to order, I'm happy to do roll.
Okay, calling today, Thursday, September 5th, Ohio City Historic Design Review Committee meeting to order. Can you please call the roll?
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Flaherty?
Here.
Mr. Frondorf?
Here.
Ms. Land? Ms. Marinucci?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Persons? Mr. Talley?
Here.
And Mr. Trevisano?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have quorum. Looks like our first project today is one we saw I guess a few meetings ago in our second July meeting, case 23-100, 2429 Superior Avenue, Bridgeworks Apartments, new construction. We looked at this last time. We started as a final review, but then shifted to a schematic review so that the applicants could go on to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission to get feedback from them before returning to you guys. So that has happened. They went to Landmarks on July 25th. And yeah, I'm happy to provide a summary of that discussion or remind you guys of your comments from the last meeting, but it might make sense to let the applicant go through their presentation first.
Dan, I will be recusing, so Phil will be chair.
You're up, Phil.
All right. Yeah, no problem. I guess we can proceed.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Klein with Geist Companies. here to present the Bridgeworks project. First off, before getting into the presentation, just want to thank the commission's flexibility last round, allowing us to kind of proceed to be able to get feedback from the Landmarks Commission. The project was well received. We had some very good comments and feedback from the Landmarks Commission, some of which was in line with comments and feedback that we received from this commission, and allowed us to really kind of hone in and make the modifications to come back for a final request today. So thank you for that. The project's located at the corner of Superior Viaduct, West 25th, and the Detroit Superior Bridge. I'll go next slide. And a few of these slides you guys are probably pretty familiar with. So I don't know if you want to just kind of go through site context and just general area, existing site conditions, the vacated street that slices through the site, and then the easement section that we'll be utilizing for connection to the underpass and underbridge. Just some concept inspiration, mood images of what, you know, the public plaza and outdoor area at that main corner kind of will look and feel and act like. Next slide. So from a general site plan perspective, nothing really changed from the last time we presented and you looked at the project here, other than just some refinement, which I'll go through in the presentation and the renderings. But we were able to kind of consolidate and limit vehicle access under bridge, allowing for a little bit more pedestrian friendly experience on the kind of backside area as it connects to the underbridge into Irish Bend Park, when that gets all full done and opened up and reconnected, with some updates to the landscape plan. Next slide. Just general circulation from pedestrian, vehicular, and public, and then service, just to give you kind of an idea of how people access the site, access the building, and then be able to circulate through the site itself. So the intention is to allow for, you know, the pedestrian to be able to cut through that, you know, underpass, under area, to access the opportunity for some special events, seasonal special events. There's been a lot of discussion since this happened that you know, the opportunity and with the success of the underbridge's opening a couple of months ago, that the ability to really treat this almost like Dumbo in New York City, where there's the connection under a bridge, and the ability to have seasonal exhibits, whether it's a farmer's market or retail, a small boutique, you know, pop-up event, and sales and retail, and repurpose the garage for that while we relocate some parking for the building on a temporary basis to allow for that to accommodate. Next slide. So site lighting, the one aspect of this that changed, we added some wall washing, linear wall washing at that intersection and connection to the right that slices through the property and to that underbridge to, again, create kind of a warm glow and accentuate, and then also be able to accentuate the repurposed stone. And we'll show you a slide detail of what that looks like here shortly. Next slide. So 7-story building, 1.5 floors of parking. The rest of the building would be multifamily and some pickleball courts and other amenities, along with a cafe. Next slide. A little bit more detail to the landscape plan. Again, creating that kind of pedestrian connection and access way, getting you from West 25th down to the underbridge, either through the existing ticket booth or along the pathway at the perimeter of the bridge, down to that lower area and underpass connection. Next slide. Native plantings and low maintenance landscaping. Next slide. Materiality of the project is relatively remained similar. I want to emphasize that I think the Mac Metals MS1 modular titanium white was really presented as a white color. The real color of that titanium white has a slight cream to it, so it's a little bit of a slight off-white white to it. But outside of that, the materiality of the building remained the same. Just the orientation and some of the detailing has been modified, including increasing some of the brick elements and floor lines. Next slide, I'll speak to. So from an elevation perspective, the corners of the building, we raised the brick floor line. We also made it consistent at the ends. Again, the idea and premise behind the design is to create that hierarchy of the main mass that's on the main frontage of the building and then connects through to the backside as a break point. Breaking up this and varying the facade and massing feel of the building, and then creating kind of a tiered approach at the bookends with the lowered cornice height with the brick in that situation. Additionally, we detailed the bookend with a little bit of that radiused window to similarly to what was going on in that middle section that everyone really seemed to like at both commission and landmarks. Next slide. This is the plaza side. Aligning on the south elevation would be the bridge section. We also limited the amount of that cream white materiality, and additionally kind of simplified some of the detailing so that it wasn't as broken up and out of place as I think some of the comments that we received at the previous commissions. Next slide. Here's a aerial rendering, kind of looking back at the city skyline and the bridge. Again, you can kind of see the brick now is another floor higher on the left section. Kind of lines a little bit better with St. Malachi to the left. Next slide. Here's a look from Superior Viaduct. It's kind of an aerial bird's eye look as well. You can see the roof terrace on the 7th floor of the middle section. Additionally, we've added a roof terrace on the 3rd floor of that inset area for some outdoor amenity space for the, and it's more of an active outdoor roof terrace on that 3rd floor. And again, limited some of the white to try to break up the building a little bit more. Next slide. Look down Superior Viaduct. Next slide. The view back up, looking at the main entrance to the building and looking up towards St. Malachi and West 25th. Next slide. It's a detailed or enlarged view of the patio. Basically, as you come down that rampway down to the main kind of inset building entrance off of West 25th in that plaza. Next slide. It's a view down just to the right of the ticket booth as that walkway connects you down to that underpass and underbridge area and connection. You can kind of see some of the archways continuing on down and the brickwork and brick detailing as well that occurs. Next slide. Here's a view back, looking back from the Detroit Superior Bridge. Gives you a look at the connection on the of that bridge connection within our building, and then also how we've limited some of the white and materiality and simplified some of the detailing that was requested at the last meeting. Next slide. Here's a view down from Superior Viaduct looking to the underbridge connection and access point. One of the things you'll see in a slide here shortly, but I'll point out in this imagery, you see the detailing of the wall paneling on the left, we're actually going to be flanking that paneling with the repurposed masonry that will be coming off of the existing buildings, and there's some details here shortly you'll see. So it'll be kind of a nice linear lining of that detail with old and new, if you will, aligning as you access as a pedestrian going down through that walkway. Next slide. Here's a look back at what this will look like as a farmer's market or a weekend special event opportunity. Right next to the opening of the underbridge, you can kind of see that detailing of those wall panels. They'll have that wall washing light to kind of create a glow and light this area and make it an inviting space. Next slide. So here's the imagery of the stone that we'll be repurposing and salvaging when we demo the existing county facility building, and then repurposing it into the building. I think in the next slide has the location and the idea of the repurpose. So we're going to be recreating and creating those Art Deco style piers that occur on the main building, and then utilize that architectural wall paneling kind of as a break. One of the comments that we'd like to adjust as we're presenting this is to really fill the space between the columns and that Art Deco wall paneling, so that it fills it more at the same line as the garage entry, so it's a little bit more consistent. But this was the idea of that salvage stone and how that GFRC molded Art Deco panels will kind of work together. Next slide. And then just one final rendering of the building, looking at the main plaza and the building itself. So excited to answer any questions and hear feedback from the commission.
Thanks for the presentation. Real quick, Dan, were you ever able to find out any information about the Stone Bridge right now? Oh, hey, there we go. Brandon, I don't know if you guys were aware that the Stone Bridge right up the street, well, 2 buildings over, is being recladded, I guess. They're taking off all the brick and doing like a metal panel. So this is what it's sitting in relation to. And I don't know a ton about the project itself. It's set to say, yeah, 32 is a good one. So this is what your building was kind of up against, minus the little building in between. Had you seen these renderings, or had you guys seen these renderings?
I haven't seen the new. I'm very familiar with the existing conditions and the issues and deterioration of that facade, but
Right. Okay. Yeah, this is helpful. It's unfortunate. It's like unfortunate that we can't see them in the same rendering, but I do appreciate this, Dan. This was very helpful. It's going to be a dark building. So can we go back to the renderings? Yeah, this one, and actually, I think I want to go to the view along Detroit Superior Bridge. Yeah, that guy. Okay, I mean, I guess they are speaking a similar language as far as the use of dark panels. But yeah, I will open it up to the committee first, though. If anyone has any questions or if you want to get anything out there, I will allow the committee to go first.
Phil, could we ask Dan to receive the feedback that Landmarks provided?
Oh, yes. Landmarks feedback.
Yes, so generally, Mr. Klein mentioned they were, I'd say overall, generally supportive. There's some recommendations that the applicant look to consider the dark and light composition, architectural expression, and urban design, the scaling of the openings at pedestrian level, and the uses to activate the spaces. There was some comments that the southern elevation could have more depth or interest with materials, colors, and contrasts and articulation. So that's the elevation that's up now. Also, additional suggestions of articulation along the Detroit Superior Edge to make it more like the north elevation or the Superior Viaduct side. I did share the Design Review Advisory Committee comments with them, of which, generally the commission was agreeable to, and again, reiterated the kind of studying the articulation of the south elevation. They thought they'd like to see some more brick and stone incorporated and less of the kind of metal panels and other siding materials. And ultimately, yeah, I guess there was also a recommendation that the applicant sort of play with the proportions of the building and to look at the Detroit Avenue elevation to express the magnitude of the building, and more integration or use of the underbridge to create a focal point. So I think sort of that, repeating the arches kind of feel. But yeah, those were generally the comments. So they were, I'd say, fairly similar to what you guys said at your last meeting where you saw this.
Thank you, Dan. I've pared my comments down from last meeting to just, I think, 3, and they're nearly identical to what Dan just read. Across the bridge, you have a public investment of hundreds of millions of dollars going into Irishtown Bend, and this site needs to be reflective of that and of the highest quality of both design and materials. And the image that's on the screen right there, the south-facing elevation, I don't think meets that the quality that the community would be looking for. This is the primary view shed if you're in the park looking north. And I think I agree with Landmarks. It needs more articulation. It needs more stone materials instead of that expanse of what I can only imagine to be several hundred feet of paneling. I don't think it meets that. My second comment is that the corners, the brick corners, that the brick go up as it does on the, I guess that's the southwest elevation, that is repeated there at the southeast elevation. That as you're driving across the bridge, you don't see those black panels for 3 stories, but rather you see the brick tower, I guess we would call it, the brick going all the way up to at least the penultimate floor, if not all the way to the top. I'm pleased to see the incorporation of the historic materials, but I'd like to see the more brick used here in the south-facing elevation, especially. I did have one question. If we could go to slide 14, Dan. I think it was slide 4. Well, yes, perfect. Maybe one more up. I'm looking for the west elevation. No. That one there. I just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at there. That west elevation, that large expanse of brick. I didn't see a 3D rendering of that, so I want to make sure I understand what it is that that is facing. Is that facing the adjacent building?
Yeah, you're not going to see this. There's Box Spot,
Okay.
which is a 3-story building flanking it and blocking it out. There is a rendering that you kind of look at that view, and again, you barely see that facade because of the adjacent buildings that block it.
Okay, understood. That was my assumption. I just want to verify.
Yep.
But no, those are my distilled down, pared down comments, are largely reflective of Landmarks. The south elevation isn't where it needs to be in terms of materiality and design, and the corners need to be held with brick going all the way up to the top or near the top.
So to clarify from Landmarks comments to us was to kind of simplify the changes in materiality along that south facade. We used to have a different type of architecture that was spanning kind of in the white section of that building. And they felt that it took away from the detailing at the corners and at that midsection. So this is the response to that. We did raise the brick at the bookends an additional story. The intention there really is to keep the emphasis at the midsection, the mask in the midsection that kind of cuts through the building, at that upper floor. And so that's really was the intent.
And I understand that, and I appreciate the efforts. It's still the large expanse of paneling, and I'm sorry to use the comparison that I used last time, but it reads like a Residence Inn off the highway, a more elevated one for sure, but it's the large expanse of that panel material along the bridge there that is the primary view shed for the park as well. No, I have nothing further.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Oh, really just want to reiterate most of Alex's comments. I actually did watch the landmarks meeting, and I do think there's a lot of consistency with regards to materiality and how you're addressing the kind of calling bookends now of the building. One of the comments in landmarks was that with the white, or as you've said, like the cream color, that with the two dark grays, it feels very high contrast, and not necessarily in a good way. And so it doesn't really seem like that cream colored paneling is very well liked. So I'd love to see a rendition of this that did not include it. I mean, this is going to be what you're looking at right here, probably the most seen angle of this project. And so I understand wanting to focus on that center building and bring the brick up highest there, but this is actually going to be the most focal point, the most focal view perspective. So I do think that bringing that brick up to the second to top floor to be consistent with the center is really important. I call these like floating cornices. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me unless you're actually having a change of use, which as far as I know, there isn't one throughout the building. So that just feels very consistent to do something about the white and then to bring the brick up. And that was reiterated a lot in landmarks as well. So I think that those two changes would make a large difference. I mean, I'm still not thrilled with the public space. I understand the want to make it a more special use space rather than an everyday space. We see this around the city where many projects incorporate some kind of plaza or public space that largely goes unused. And so I'd really love to see a space that's used rather than a space that's aesthetic. And given the location of this and how many people are going to be using, hopefully, the underbridge, it's a very prominent pedestrian point. And the access point, I think, in the underbridge could maybe use a little bit more attention too. I don't know if maybe I didn't pay enough attention to it last time, but it just feels a little bit dead. And I really think that that is something that is so important to the city and connecting these neighborhoods. If there's, it kind of shows, like, you can really see the yeah. I think that if there is something more welcoming, because now it feels like I'm not really supposed to traverse there. And I think that it's really, really important for the city to have the connectivity between Ohio City and downtown. I know this is a very big deal project. And so if this building could create some kind of welcoming point there, I think that would, to me, that would make up for the fact that I think the plaza as it currently is going to be unused, like a lot of the other ones, because people just don't really have like a lot of places to land. And this is I don't want to go into this too much, but markets are very saturated in the city, in this neighborhood. I don't really know if there's like a need, and getting one off the ground is quite difficult with regularity. So if we could just address this, then I guess we can have, you know, the plaza as is, if that's what you want to do. So, yeah, so that's my comments on materiality. I'd love to see the white get lost. The brick coming up to the second to top floor, and the south elevation does need some work. I'm not an architect, so I can't speak to that. I just I think that what the public is going to see, you know, most people aren't architects. The public is going to see is going to be a little bit busy and confusing, and addressing this underbridge access point. So those are my comments.
So I guess I will fill in a little bit, kind of echoing some of the sentiments. Alex brought it up that there is this like large investment in a park across the street, and saying that page 22, uh, sort of rendering elevation doesn't necessarily reflect that. I definitely agree about it needing more relief. I guess the other way to think about this, has pretty much been stated by other folks, is that this is one of the gateways in the city. This is a gateway into downtown. This is a gateway into the Detroit Shoreway, and it should be, I, in my mind, it should be somewhat iconic. Similar to, you know, going across the bridge down on Lorraine and seeing the statues when you come across, and seeing the West Side Market when you come across, and seeing Intro when you come across. Um, I- and I thought Residence Inn was a little savage, but I kind of have to agree. And one other thing he said that I thought kind of hit at it was that it feels like there's several hundred feet of metal panel, and there's not several hundred feet. It just feels like that, um, which again, it's fine. I think there are some elements in this building that work though, and I really have to mention like that. Can we go to the Art Deco alley view? I think that's a wonderful concept and a great idea, and I like go to, we'll stick on this one. Um, I think it's a wonderful concept. I love that textured brick. I love the detailing. I thought that was amazing on this project, and I thought it was amazing on the last version of this project, the detailing. Um, you're showing ballards here in plan, but you're not showing them in the views, and I would be curious to.
Those aren't bollards. Those are planters that'll be vertical.
Oh,
They'll be movable. There's a CPP transformer that is at that underbridge that needs to be accessible.
okay.
So there'll be vertical planters that'll they're just not rendered in this, but they would be there as a kind of a you know vehicular deterrent for 95% of the time.
Gotcha. I think then if this, you know, if we did see this rendering again, not maybe not this one, maybe you go to the next page, Dan. I think in this one we would see the planners at least. And then maybe there's another one where a car is interacting with this. That's just not very important because I'm kind of sold on this part. Although I hearing kind of Whitney's comments on like farmer market, like I see the struggle. Um, that path that's going in, it definitely does seem like something. Well, let me put this. I think adding the lighting to that side, I think has kind of improved the feeling going down that path. Um, it does seem a bit narrow, and it does seem like it doesn't feel like it's the safest or most welcoming place. Um, I don't want to repeat everything what people said about the materials, but yeah, I think it's relief along that bridge to kind of create something that says this is Cleveland. And I don't think that that's happening right now. Um, and I also kind of really like the language. I like this modern language, and I like the language that you create with the red brick and the arches. I think those are both pretty powerful. Hopefully, you know, maybe you can incorporate that with kind of that relief along the Detroit Superior Bridge. Um, Are all of these materials metal panel? Like I'm seeing the white, that's the MAC metals. Is the black with the black and the charcoal? Are all these metal
So
panels?
the medium gray is not. The dark charcoal and the white are.
Okay. Um, yeah, I guess it did seem kind of like it had a easy trim pattern going on with it. Um, yeah, I think that's all I really want to say. I think this, like I said, I think that path at below is a great concept. I think it works. It's just there are some dead spots with the rest of the design. Anybody else?
I had a I had a question about kind of the ingress and egress. If we can maybe go back to um, either the plan view or alternatively any of the renderings that kind of show that entrance. My understanding is that not too much has changed in the layout of anything. It's been mostly cladding. So, and I know that a comment from our previous meeting was concern about egress and just how these particular parking areas are structured to come off of this kind of leg that's coming off the street here. Um, can the applicant just really quickly walk us through again what their expectations are on how pedestrians, people using wheelchairs, people just generally accessing this are supposed to share this space with the cars moving in and out?
Yeah, if you can go to slide 8, I guess it is. It's actually a circulation plan that shows some of the motion. So this the when you say the shared access, you're talking about the vertical access way that connects to the underbridge. Is that
Yeah, the vertical on the plan.
the intention and the thought process back here? Under this would be treating it almost like a Villeneuve, like a European street that um, that shares cars, parking, bikes, be able to cross, through. The intention of this is would be a very low flow garage from a vehicular perspective. Apartment buildings are actually one of the easiest, I'll call it, vehicular circulation aspects because people dilute and leave at different times, different hours during the day. So, the intention would be that this would be a slow moving vehicular access point. And really, emphasize that the materiality would feel more of I'll call it that European street, kind of feel that shares, and what you see in that access point, um, to be able to cut through.
Okay. I'm I'm pleasantly surprised to hear a mention of a Wernhof or Wernhof. I don't know what that Dutch word is. Interesting. Do you have any concerns though about this? It sounds like no. But is that kind of the case? You feel good about sight lines and everything, and
Yeah, that access road is it's 30-foot wide, so it's wider than our 20-foot streets that we have in parking lots in Cleveland. Again, obviously pedestrians and bike will have to take care, but the intention would be that there would be kind of a bordered walkway versus the access way, and it's why we kind of tried to cut down the access points to 3. I think our original proposal had 5 because of the way that it transversed in there, and we've added those planters to kind of stop traffic from continuing on to kind of, I'll call that, a special event side of the access way.
okay. Another comment, I think the very first comment that I made in the last meeting was the location of this bike parking room that might be over on the far east side. Has there been any consideration about moving the bicycle parking closer to where the handicap spaces are, more towards the center, which I think where more of the amenities and destinations would be?
We did put exterior bike parking on the outside of the building, just to the northern section of this. It's just up above that on Superior Viaduct over in that area. Yep. In that area, ownership likes the location because it's closer to the Irish Bend Park connection and access way directly off of that sidewalk access, opposed to being kind of more internal. That's just how we laid it out.
Okay, so your expectation is that you won't be requesting any variances.
We already have all the variants needed for this project.
Great. My last question was kind of like a minor detail. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. There's kind of this walkway that comes in from the southwest corner in towards the center and where some of that cafe seating is. Can we jump to a rendering of that? There's a, what I suspect is some sort of handrail, kind of in like a staggered, like 3 staggered things. And I'm wondering if there's a particular reason why you chose to kind of stagger it as opposed to not just make them parallel with each other. I'm trying to imagine myself or others moving through this space and just having to constantly be making left turns to each little segment. Do you have any kind of insight on to why that's like that, not just like a more smoother straight shot?
Can you go to the plan? So the intentions of this, area would be that it had intermediate lower tiers, and just kind of the way that the flow of the staggered, as it relieved. I mean, and kind of broken up. We didn't want this to feel like a utilitarian ramp that just was 100-foot section of ramp with landings, to kind of make it a little bit more, a little bit more of a sculptural type entry. It's why we kind of have the flowing steps on the, and tiers on the left and right of that ramp, as you kind of create these different platforms and terraces, if you will, between the ticket booths, the upper area, the lower sections, etc.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
I'll jump in. So I'll start with what I think works pretty well. I think where the plaza's positioned and kind of relief at the end of the bridge, I actually think the plaza's kind of nice there. I think at the pedestrian scale around the building and through the underpass, especially the detailing there is nice. I think my concern maybe kind of echoes what Alex had mentioned at the beginning. It's really the south facade, and that rendering on the bridge, and just depth within that. And I think if you can go to that rendering towards the end. Yes. So it's really, I think the thing that's getting me is just transitioning from one material to another and having everything in the same plane. And I think when we're talking about depth, it's not necessarily the articulation of kind of the windows or the detail in each of those elements, but it's how are those kind of pulled apart from each other. So you feel like it's not kind of one flat plane across the facade. And I guess my last comment is, coming from the Cleveland downtown, having that area brick, 2 levels up, so it feels like that middle section, which feels pretty good, would be helpful. So I'll leave it at that.
Any more comments?
Dan, I have a procedural question. Because we've tabled this once, is it my understanding we're not able to do that a second time?
Last time it wasn't tabled, we
It was conceptual.
decided to look at it as schematic instead. So it has, as far as our records are concerned, it has not been tabled yet.
So I guess I have a question for the applicant. Would you like a vote on this, or would you like to table to address the concerns raised at this meeting?
I'd like to move forward. I think we've talked about this project for quite some time, and we've been in front of this group enough times as well, but that's just a very candid comment. I think we wouldn't be objectionable to raising the brick at the corners, as as you're requesting. I'd always like to stress if there was an opportunity to move forward to an approval with conditions. If that doesn't seem favorable, then yes, tabling would to allow us to make some adjustments.
I think my motion would have been, if I were forced to make one, would be a motion that it is not appropriate not to pass it because primarily of the south facade there as it faces Irish Town Bend. And I think all committee members are in agreement, at least on that key component of this. And that is such a key component that I could not vote in support of this with what's on the screen right now.
So do we want to make that the motion then?
Well, I'm asking the applicant, that's the motion I will make. If you'd like to table it to do that, we can consider that. If you'd like a motion, then I'm prepared to make that motion.
Before I answer that question, I do want to stress the fact that we understand the significance of Irish Town Bend Park and the investment on the other side of this bridge. One of the items I do want to stress is that from a viewpoint perspective, when you're in that bridge or in that valley, if you will, the elevation of this bridge, you're basically going to be screening and maybe only seeing the top 2.5 floors of this building. So I do want to stress from a viewpoint perspective, this rendering may not be the best, I'll call it backdrop, to what you will see in real time. Sure, if you're across the city and looking back at this from across the river and in that aspect, you'll see that view. But I do want to stress the fact that this bridge is a very wide bridge, and then the elevation change between the park and the distance to our building, you're only going to see the top 2.5 floors of this building.
Right, but at the West 25th Street elevation along the park, you will see this. And as Philip perfectly put it, Cleveland deserves an iconic building here. Cleveland deserves something a little bit more elevated here, and better is possible. And that's why this committee exists. So would you like me to make the motion then?
Go ahead and table it.
Okay. All right, then I will move to table this per the applicant's request.
Have a second?
Second.
Dan, could you call roll?
Sure thing. Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Flaherty,
Yes.
Mr. Frondorf,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Trevisano,
Yes.
and Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion to table passes unanimously. So yeah, Brandon, you guys can make those revisions. If you want to talk or discuss with staff at all, we're happy to meet and have conversations if that's helpful to you and understanding, the comments that have come from this committee and from the Landmarks Commission further. But yeah, I guess we'll when you guys have some revisions.
Procedurally, if since it's a tabled project, when do revisions have to be back into the commission?
So our next meeting of this committee is September 19th. So we would need by the 12th, the end of the day, September 12th, we'd need revisions if you want to show up here on the 19th.
So since it's tabled, it still has to be in a week advance.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we'd like to get the plans, like the agenda set and the plans out to everyone to have time to review before, before the actual meeting. Well, we can talk offline if there's some details that you might need additional time on, I'm sure we can figure something out, but just if it's a supplemental thing for a couple images or something like that, but we do like them a week in advance.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Next up, we have a schematic review. So it's case HOC 24-26, 4208 Clinton Avenue, the Ohio City Historic District. New construction for the Shoe residence. Again, this is schematic only, so no votes taken, no motion, just some feedback for, I guess, our very own Neo Marinucci.
Hello, everybody. My clients, Zach and Chelsea Shu, are on this call. So if they, you guys can chime in on anything if you'd like to. We are presenting a new construction single-family residence at 4208 Clinton Avenue. Next slide. Here is the, okay, thanks. Here's the existing site. It is a empty lot. So this is just really showing kind of our assessment of the buildable area per zoning. Next slide. Here is a little bit of the historic mapping. It looks like there was a structure, a home on the property at some point, but has not been there for at least the past decade plus, I think several decades. Next slide.
I think it burnt down I think it was in the late 80s.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so on the top row of images, you can see that the site itself, it's just a grass field. It was owned by the manufacturing company behind it that faces Detroit prior to the Shoes taking ownership. And then bottom row of this slide is the like immediate neighbors to the west. We have like that white kind of what used to be an Italianate vinyl structure. And then to the east, there is a folk Victorian. And there's actually, if you look closely at that photo, there is a rear kind of yellow colonial on the back half of that lot. And then to the south, there are renovated row homes. And then we also have the new construction development with a few single family homes also to the south across the street. Next slide. Broader neighborhood context, I have a bunch of examples, majority of which were newer constructions along Clinton Avenue, had an influx of kind of newer builds, let's say the last 10 years. And there's a couple renovations in here as well. And then I also included two kind of Greek revival examples elsewhere in the historic district, which you will see we're kind of evoking in the new construction plans. Next slide. So leaning into that sort of aesthetic as we were looking at a kind of more modern colonial Greek revival type of architecture. It's not I would say not a strict interpretation of this style, but it is what we are aiming for from like a massing in some modest detailing on this new proposal. Next slide. This is looking at just the schematic siting itself. The residence is fairly large by the neighborhood standards. I think we're going to be just at like 4,300 or 4,400 square feet. And again, it's a single family home, although we are proposing a carriage apartment above the garage. So we wanted to kind of go with an L-shaped type of plan to really fill the width of the lot. It is a bit wide. It's about 1.5 lots. And then kind of connect to the back with a 3-car garage, again, with that carriage house above. And that's sort of where we landed with our siting. Next slide. This is just for reference. I just you know, I know you guys don't need to see the floor plans themselves, but this is where we're, just in case it's needed for the conversation. You can see from this view that sort of like the plan left side of the home is actually single story, and then the double height volume is on the eastern side of the site, which is also reflected in the elevations. Next slide. Okay, so this is looking at the proposed front and east elevations, and you can sort of see how that massing ends up shaking out. And you can also see where we are kind of evoking the Greek Revival style in both the more traditional window styles, the kind of corner eave detailing, the roof pitch, and the other intention kind of behind the massing in this way was that because the site is wider, I really did want to work in like two front-facing gables in some capacity to sort of make it feel like it was fitting the rhythm of our like most prevalent, you know, front-facing gable context of the broader neighborhood, which seems to kind of transcend the different historic styles we have present in the district. And we also are opting for like one of the kind of elements I think to make it distinct as a modern construction or new construction is also integrating the kind of larger, more modern window alongside the sort of more traditional 6/6 double hung. So that is the kind of balance that we have struck, what we hope to have struck in this massing and kind of rhythm of the new facade. On the east side, the side view, again, you're getting the broader face of that two-story element. And I think it kind of does hail back to sort of like that more colonial type feel. But that's, you will see this kind of front half of that massing from the street front, given the fact that the neighboring property has the house tucked back. So we do have like a little relief in the massing so that, you know, front half of that double height massing would be pretty visible. So I wanted to make sure that that, you know, was clearly expressed. Next slide. This is the rear elevation, both the traditional rear elevation as that carriage house and three-car garage would appear at the alley face, but also kind of the interior is what I phrased it as. Rear elevation, mostly for like the client's benefit of understanding what, you know, how we're starting to look at that interior space. It almost creates like a little courtyard of privacy for their family. And you can see on that garage face, I am showing like a shake, like potentially to distinguish the carriage house from the house. I don't know that we'll actually do that, but I would guess gauge if that is something that we could explore, if you guys felt that that was appropriate, but just note that that's doesn't have to be that. But it's, we're trying to kind of alleviate the massing of the carriage house or fit into the correct kind of scale of a carriage house by dormering the second floor, and the carriage apartment would kind of fit up into that, into the dormer and eave spaces. So keeps the scale kind of a little more under control. Next slide. This is the west facade, so that side facade, and same thing like this sort of straight west side elevation view, and then the interior one. But from here you can see how that like front, it's the living room in plan, but the one that's closest to us physically is the smaller one-story massing and the two-story beyond. And again, you can see how the kind of carriage house and the dormer situate themselves in accordance to kind of like that, you know, hierarchy and massing of the overall house. Next slide. And then this is just a closer view of the front facade, pretty much just for the sake of conversation, if we want to look at it a little more closely. Next slide. Materiality wise, we have two different kind of color schemes, but you know, they're related. The shoes are hoping for a darker structure. We are going with, we're planning for James Hardy board, smooth lap siding, Marvin aluminum clad wood windows, 8-dimensional shingle for the roof. They would love gas lanterns, I think specifically on the front and maybe elsewhere if we can if budget allows. But we are going, trying to evoke, kind of leaning more into that, that like colonial Greek revival, almost New England type feel that I think is a lot more common to see some of these deeper tones and more like more monochromatic type tones in that region. Next slide. Here's another alternative that we loved, which was the Raycroft bronze green. And again, kind of showing what are, you know, how that color palette kind of would look on a broader scale with just some historic example images for each colorway. Next slide. I think that's it, right? Okay. All right, we're welcome your feedback. Chelsea and Zach, if you have anything else you'd like to add, feel free. For reference, Chelsea and Zach live on 49th and Tillman currently, and they have 2 little ones and are hoping to continue to grow their family on this property. So they are, you know, making a long-term investment clearly. So.
I don't think anything to add, Nia. No, I look forward to working with y'all. We've been in the neighborhood for just over 7 years now. Renovated over in the Gordon Square area prior to you know, it's up and coming, and looking forward to kind of, you know, making Ohio City home for the foreseeable future. So thank you.
So this is just schematic. This is just conceptual. We're not voting on anything.
Right.
So this is a big house. I like it though. I actually like the exterior design. The only piece that I don't 100% love is probably the front porch. I totally get it. I totally get the inspiration for it. I totally get the style. I just kind of wish there was a way to kind of capture the sort of Ohio City front porch where I can come out and sit and like, you know, talk with the neighbors and kind of have that like just sort of space to relax. And I know that's happening on the interior, kind of facing the backyard. I just wish it sort of maybe overhanged in a similar way in the front, to kind of, you know, can build that connection. Because I feel like I see like a huge house and I'm like not connected to the people that live there. I'm not like, as I'm walking by, I'm like, ooh, that's really nice. But I think that having a porch that is, you know, a little railing or something on it, is just something that helps build that connection with the neighborhood. And then as far as the color schemes, these were 2 possible color schemes, or are these different parts of the house?
2 possible. So
Oh,
just 2
okay.
different we, you know, presented 4,
Yeah.
and those were the 2 favorites. So just figured
Okay.
we'd put them both in as this was for, you know, the conversation.
Okay. Yeah, I like them. The blue is kind of similar to the one across the street, I believe, which makes me, I don't know, this is inconsequential. Sim, I love it a little bit less, but you know, I like actually both color schemes. Um, I appreciate the dark approach. I don't mind the idea of just like maybe a different dark trim. Um, to go along with that. I don't know if everything needs to be kind of the same sort of shade, but I think the whole thing looks good. It's a really nice house. Um, I hope it happens for you guys.
Thanks, Phil.
Anybody else?
I like to echo Phil's comments, but first, Chelsea and Zach, I live on Clinton Avenue. Looking forward to being your neighbor. I think this is going to be a great addition. The lot you're building on is the original size, and it was divided up in the Victorian period. And I'm glad that you're putting a home to occupy the lot back there. It looks great. I just have a couple comments. One was I agree with Phil's comment about the porch. You know, some of the inspiration photos that Nia put on the screen, but not all, have porches. And I have a large porch on Clinton Avenue, and it's great for building community, meeting your neighbors. And I find that during the summer, I live out there a good part of the year. So if there's a way to integrate a porch, great. I'll leave that to the both of you. But I do think that it would match a lot of the homes that you see there on the screen. and is a great way of building community, and would be consistent with the Greek Revival period as well. One question, Nia, on the windows, are the muttons proposed to be external?
Yes,
Okay,
STLs. You know,
thank
I'll
you.
be a stickler with them on that.
And then my last substantive comment, if we go to the south elevation, the front elevation, the eastern portion there, the two-story version,
Mhm.
then you have, it just seems a little busy to me. There's 4 different window types there. And I know you're not sticking closely to the Greek Revival, and it's a modern house, it's a new house, and that's fine. But simplifying that version and maybe not having the 2-story, I know there's a stairwell there.
Mhm.
I understand that, but maybe breaking that up in some way,
Okay.
making it more reflective of the Greek Revival style. And if you're looking for a porch, maybe a porch roof there would help break that up if you wanted to keep the double-story windows. Just some thoughts. And then finally, just around back, because you're on Wheat Court there,
Mhm.
to consider adding a fence to the plans.
Mhm. Yes.
That's all. I think the materials are wonderful. I don't have an opinion on the color. And it's just the front elevation there. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Alex.
Okay. I'm going to mirror Alex again. So I think the house as a whole is a very nice project. It's really that double-story window and the consideration of breaking it up and kind of lessening the busyness there. Thanks.
Thanks, Brent.
What else?
Great. If it's okay, I'll jump in. Awesome project. Thanks for trying to do this. Looks great. With the porch, maybe I don't know if I'm necessarily saying anything differently, but my understanding is kind of like Greek Revival styles, especially for the front entrance, generally don't have a large porch. Like Alex's awesome porch is on the side of the house. It was a really cool execution how that was done. For this porch right here, what are these columns? Just dimensional posts wrapped?
Yeah, they're
Or
like a 8-inch
columns?
wrapped.
Okay.
And that is, Angela, like why we wrestled with a couple different iterations, and I leaned towards more like what I would call an oversized portico as that porch
Mhm.
element, because I felt that the Greek Revival, like, yes, Alex, your porch on the side is absolutely perfect and beautiful, but we actually did have a couple iterations that had the side front porch idea. This is what shook out to be most agreeable from every other aspect. And that is the intention. It was kind of like the oversized portico on the Greek Revival, sort of. And it's, again, it's like I said, it's not a strict interpretation of that. It's just that's how we landed here.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I didn't know if those were round columns, which I think maybe you'd find a little bit more in Greek Revival. And if they almost seem like the columns could be a little bit bigger
Okay.
and maybe lined up so like the column, I don't know all the classical terms, but they could maybe be moved out a little bit more. I don't think there should be a railing. I don't think there generally were railings or balustrades on these things. It looks cool. I sort of agree with the window thing on the right side. This is a new construction though, so I think it's really cool too. On one of the other elevations, it looked like there was a chimney, like a masonry chimney built. I don't know which elevation that was, but that seems like it's going to be a really fun detail. Yeah, right there in the bottom right. Yeah, that's all. I mean, Nia knows the game and kind of what fits in the neighborhood. So I think it's great for schematic.
Thanks, Angela.
I have a very quick question. First, I think it's lovely. Really no notes from me, but with there being such a large first floor, is there a first floor bedroom
There is.
in the house? Okay.
Mhm.
I just ask because that's very rare in this neighborhood. It's very hard to find. So when you build new construction, it's nice to add that option there for people to age in place or people with disabilities. I've known both who have had hard times finding housing here with the ability to have the first floor bedroom. So I really like that aspect of it. And I know that speaks to the interior, not the exterior, but just
Actually,
appreciate
our current house on 49th, we modified and it has a first floor master, and that was really important to us for this house as well.
Yeah, I think that's needed in this neighborhood. So I appreciate that. And now someone else, you know, as you sell, someone else who needs that first floor bedroom will have the opportunity to have it. So thank you.
Thanks, Whitney. Is that everyone today? No, Maura?
Nothing additional from what's already been said. I think it looks great. I do agree with the comments about the porch. It would be nice to incorporate some sort of element like that to engage with the community, but and the color, I like both of them, but if there is the blue tone across the street, part of what makes the neighborhood special is having that variety. So, you know, choosing something different from what's across the street could be nice.
Well, thank you all. We are in getting like the first round of kind of DD cost analysis done. So hopefully everything will be in alignment and we will be coming back for final before the end of the year with any, you know, changes based on cost, but we're really hoping that it's substantially similar to what we have here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. I'll say that, you know, Chelsea had mentioned we had redone a house on 49th. It was I think the original single family home on the farm north of Detroit. And it at some point in the 70s, I believe, been converted to 4 units. And we did a complete rehab 7 years ago and brought it back to the original single family home. And so it was important for us when we saw this lot go for sale that, you know, when we had interest in it, to make it a single family home and not split the lot in 2 or you know, try to parcel it out into multiple, like many have done in and around this area. So it was very important for us to incorporate single family home into the project and make it such.
You're doing a service to the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right. Do I need to close out the meeting, Dan, or is Phil?
Yeah, I guess you're out of recusal jail now. So yeah. Really?
Okay. Do we have any other, what is the phrasing? Any other notes or administrative?
Oh, administrative reports. I don't have
Yes,
any,
any
dude.
reports?
Do you have a chair's report? I don't have
I don't.
I don't have anything else for us today. So just that our next meeting is September 19th, and yeah, I think I have it figured out now so that I can link the agenda through the hyperlink on the agenda, so you can see those without having to send a separate Dropbox link. So
That'd be great.
yeah, so I think you're free to adjourn.
Great. So today's Thursday, September 5th, Ohio City Historic Design Review Committee meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.